show, and that is my answer to a DollFAM topic choice question where I post this little beauty over on my Facebook page and I ask you guys to leave some topics that you want to hear me talk about in the comments below, and then I pick one and I answer it on my show. So today's answer is going to be answering the question that fits this segment. So I think it's great. It's like peanut butter and jelly. And it is from the amazing Miss Abby Rivers. And she says, what's your advice for getting out of an abusive relationship or situation? So I think this is really great because it goes with what we were talking about. I personally have had to get out of an abusive relationship and an abusive situation. I had to get out of an abusive relationship with my first husband. I had to get out of an abusive situation with my mother. I have such a hard time openly just saying that because it still hurts really, really bad. Because I love my mom. I love my mom endlessly. I love my dad endlessly. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to remove ourselves from abusive situations once we have our eyes open to the fact that we are in abusive situations. I think that a lot of us are trying to navigate relationships that are abusive, and one of the hardest things that you have to do before you can remove yourself from these situations is acknowledge that's where you are. It can be really difficult to admit and acknowledge and process and realize that you're in an abusive relationship or situation, when you're, especially when it's with people that you love. And abusive relationships and situations are always with people we love. The people that we love the most can hurt us the absolute most, as sucky as that can be. So for me, as somebody who is a people pleaser and constantly wants to make people happy and not let people down and fulfill what everybody wants me to do all the time, it was really difficult for me to admit to the fact that I needed to pull the plug in some of these areas. That's a terrible term. I apologize. I need to not say that. Well, that's just, I've never, it's just all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, pull the plug. Don't say that. I'm sorry. Patricia was like, girl, even for me, that's just gross. I apologize. That's a terrible thing to say. So for me, once I left my abusive relationship was when and went back home was when I realized that I hadn't really left the abusive relationship. I just moved to a different room of the house that it was in. I think that the biggest thing that you have to face first is the fear of change. It's really scary to face all of the changes that you're going to have to go through when you leave abusive relationships. Now, there was some issues with safety. A lot of people leaving abusive relationships and situations have to worry about their safety. I didn't have to worry about that with my relationship with my ex. I did have to worry about that with the situation with my mom. I think that there's a difference in situations when you're like dealing with a regular abuser and then you're dealing with somebody who is mentally unstable within themselves, and their choices and the way that they abuse are based because of that. So like my ex was abusive in many ways. But those were things that I left, and once I chose to 100% leave that situation, I could progress. And everything was in my control at that point, because the only ways that person could continue to abuse me is if I allowed it, if I placated the abuse, if I continued to give him space and a platform in my life that I was choosing to move forward with. Not everybody has that luxury, because there's people who take things so much further and they behave in ways that are so much more invasive and dangerous. My ex did not do that, so I didn't have to worry about that. Did he continue to text me and berate me and say horrible, horrific things? Most certainly. But one of the things that I would say is when you leave those abusive relationships where there's cheating and control and manipulation like I didn't have to worry about anything physical with him, thank goodness. I know a lot of people that they are, and that's much more difficult to navigate. I don't have advice in that because I didn't experience it. My advice would probably be very basic, right? In those areas where you need to leave, get away from it however you can, get as far away from it as you can. But that doesn't always work because protection orders don't work, pieces of paper don't work. In some situations, you leave the abuse and you do everything that you're supposed to, but it just still keeps coming. And those can be really hard situations to navigate. In those situations, I would say you have to find secure support systems that are there for you 24/7 that help protect you when it gets to those degrees, because you need help with protection in those areas. You need people staying with you at all times. You need people that are there to defend you, and you need to learn how to defend yourself. But for me, when I left the abusive relationship, you have to be firm. You have to acknowledge within yourself that this is the abuse that's happening, and it's happening. And there is no more excuses you can make. You can't ignore it. You can't make excuses for him, she, they, them, whoever you're with. Acknowledge that this is happening to you, and you have to make your choice to move on from it because you deserve better. Once you make that valid choice of, I'm not doing this anymore, you have to stick to that choice. I had a point where I laid in bed crying, going, I just need to go back. I need to try and get him to take me back. What have I done? I have to try and figure this out. I have to smooth it over with him and my parents. Like, how am I going to get him and my parents to get along again after this? Because my parents wanted me to leave. But then the next day, he was sending me text messages just berating me and saying the most horrible things to me. And I was like, oh yeah, nothing's changed. I'm just scared. I'm scared of change. I'm scared to do this on my own. I'm scared of the future now that I have to try and navigate. That's so different from the future that I thought I was going to be navigating. You have all these fears. And I think the next thing that you need to do is you need to remember that you need to take everything one day at a time. Because it will work out if you have that steady pace of just moving forward one day at a time. There's going to be so many things that come up that are hard and they're scary and they're difficult to navigate. You're going to cry in the shower. You're going to cry in your bed. You're going to have moments where you're screaming at the top of your lungs because you don't think you can do it. You're going to be mad. You're going to be sad. You're going to be broken. You're going to be angry. But this is the process of grief. And you're leaving something that you thought was going to be one thing, and it turned into such a horrific alternate of that you're not only grieving the past of the beauty that you thought you were going to have, but now you're grieving the situation that this person put you in and was okay with putting you in and hurting you over and over and over again. So there's so much grief that you have to process while you're trying to rebuild your life. So have mercy on yourself, but also have a part of yourself that's willing to be the strong part to help guide you through that pain, to not go back. You have to have a Patricia in you that's cheering for you, and you have to have people that are willing to cheer for you, that just want your best interest, to navigate through that grief process. Because once you get on the other side of that and you can think clear and you can see clear, it's way more easier to start making more serious choices in your life. And for me, it was just the fear of the unknown. You get yourself in these situations that you don't ever think you're going to be in, and you have to navigate that, and it's scary, but you have to make the active choice to move forward. And I think a lot of us are scared, and it's hard, and we tend to go back, and we tend to allow our abusers to lie to us to try and smooth things over, because they're also uncomfortable. They're losing that control over you, and they want to be able to keep that so they can continue their abuse, because that's where they get their validation. So they're also uncomfortable, and they're going to be grasping at straws. And for me, my abuser went back and forth. I almost just dropped my computer. Went back and forth between more abuse and then doing the I love you, I love you. And we all know that they do that, right? So it's just this back and forth of trying to play this game to see what's going to grab you again. And I think that my next advice would be to just not placate it. Like, have a professional relationship with these people. If you don't have children, cut it off completely. No interaction is the best interaction. Cold turkey is the best way with these kinds of things, because any interaction is placation for them and gives them a foothold that turns to a stronghold that can put you right back in the situation you came from. So, and if you do have children, a professional situation is best. You don't do the back and forth hours of texting of you did this, I did this, trying to defend yourself, trying to reason. In abusive situations, there is no reasoning. Like, let this person think what they're going to think. You have to work on you now, and you have to put you first, because your healing is the most important thing to get you to a point where you're strong enough to move forward, to not even be considering this person anymore. But when it came to leaving an abusive situation with like my mom, it was very much the same. I had to put my foot down and let this person know, who was my mom, that my choices and who I am matter, and that I loved her very much and I wanted her in my life, but I didn't need her to control my life anymore. And if she wanted to be a part of my life and a part of my cheering squad and have a positive, relationship with me, I wanted that more than anything. But the moment that I told her that I wanted her, I didn't need her, she hung up the phone on me, and I didn't really have any other conversations with her from that point on. But again, I feel like that's a different situation, because my mom has some mental instability that she refuses to seek help with, and I think that it's become very difficult for her to even function in a reality of comprehension, and it makes any type of reasoning with her hard, but it also makes her act very delusional and very dangerous. So my mom has done things and put me and my kids in situations that are very harmful and very dangerous. So because of that, absolutely no interacting, no conversation has been had. When situations become abusive and people put you in danger and they put your kids in danger, and they're willing to lie and manipulate and harm for their own narratives and their own validations in the demented idea of what they feel the relationship needs to be, is the moment that you need to just completely check out, because there is nothing you can do. And it can be really scary. My mom had a big stronghold over me, and I lived for a really long time not wanting to speak my mind. You just do what people tell you to do. You don't ever want to cause trouble or issues or problems. So you do what the abuser says, because they get aggressive, they manipulate, they say things that are really difficult to deal with. So you just kind of go along with it. And when it's somebody like your mom or your dad or your grandma or your grandpa or whoever is like super, this close relationship, you try everything to placate it because you feel like you're supposed to, because it's a person in your family. But I've learned that family really is what you make of it. And we are all just people. We are all just humans. And just because we were born into the same tribe doesn't mean that we're gonna vibe forever. And I realized that I was the black sheep of the family. When I realized that I was the black sheep of the family after being the like poster child of the family for so many years, and that's what put me in the doormat position, because everybody relied on me for comfort, everybody relied on me being their solid team member. I was the black sheep of the family, and sometimes it's okay to be the black sheep of the family, because you have to go find your colors elsewhere, and you have to pick what colors you want to wear, and you want to pick what colors that you vibrate and radiate towards others. And I think ultimately it's hard to get out of these situations because we fear the unknown. We fear losing those connections that we feel like we're supposed to have, that ultimately we don't have, and it makes things really difficult. But you have to make those hard choices, because hard choices turn out to be strong choices for yourself later on. And I, for one, am rooting for you. And if you're navigating these choices by yourself and you need help in these areas, I'm an open book with my experiences, my guidance, whatever I can do. So always feel free to reach out to me, and if you really want to get into it, you can book a call with me. I'm not a licensed anything, but I have a lot of experience, and I'm willing to share everything that I've experienced if it means that it can help you. So you can book a call with me and we can sit down and we can talk it out, and I will try to help you as well as I can because I care about your positive well-being. So that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so we've talked about